This is the crux of it. The UFC is a business, and they are falling on their knees to Conor McGregor's demands. Conor McGregor is the UFC. There is no separation between the two now. If there were, Conor McGregor wouldn't be facing Eddie Alvarez for the 155-pound title. He has an obligation to defend his 145-pound title against either Max Holloway, who's been on a winning streak in the featherweight division, or Jose Aldo. A rematch against any of those two are necessary, but he is putting the title in limbo by deciding not to fight at the featherweight division. The weight cut is obviously tremendously hard, and as a fighter, you saw him in the Cage Warriors competition. He looks so much better, so much more stronger, and so much more technical in the 155-pound division that you can understand why he's requesting that. But look at Khabib Nurmagomedov from Russia. I mean, he deserves the 155-pound title shot, but he's not getting it. Why? Because Conor McGregor is the UFC. He has the star power which the UFC is lacking at the moment. Let's be frank here. Ronda Rousey is not competing in the UFC. Anderson Silva has come off a drug suspension, and it's affected his reputation, whether you like him or not. And Conor McGregor kind of has some Muhammad Ali traits, which Conor himself embraces. He's always been very respectful of Muhammad Ali, and when you have someone that can transcend the sport like Conor McGregor is doing, then you just have to give your plaudits to the man who is exceeding the levels of not just what a fighter is, but what a promoter is. He is a business promoter, but he's also a fantastic fighter, and that's why he's able to get this leverage to fight for the 155-pound title. And if you were Jose Aldo, what would you be thinking? You just got knocked out by Conor McGregor in under 13 seconds. That's the official time, but technically it was under or about 11 seconds. And you need to get that title back, but he's not defending it, Conor McGregor. He's going to the 155-pound division where he wants to become a simultaneous world champion in two divisions. Can Conor McGregor make the featherweight division again in terms of weight? He can, logistically, but it takes a lot out of him. So what's the point of giving him 2 belts consecutively if it may only be for 2 months? He may not ever want to fight in the featherweight division again. And that's assuming that he wins, of course, against Eddie Alvarez, who is definitely not an opponent you want to underestimate. In the scheme of things, Eddie Alvarez beat Rafael dos Anjos and in a UFC fight night card, so it wasn't even on, a UFC pay-per-view event, and he still beat Rafael dos Anjos when he actually beat Donald Cerrone twice, Anthony Pettis, some real storied, fighters with solid credentials and skills, and yet he lost. And that just proves the nature of the UFC. Anyone can win on a given day, but there are fighters who are just exceedingly better than the other, and Conor McGregor should not find this fight as easy as a Jose Aldo fight would be, because Eddie Alvarez cuts a lot of weight to make 155 as well. They're both the same height. Conor has a reach advantage, a slight reach advantage, and so it'll be interesting to see the dynamics of how the fight goes. Eddie Alvarez will look to wrestle Conor McGregor. If you look at the previous matches, Conor McGregor has shown weakness in his wrestling and his jiu-jitsu. Nate Diaz choked him out, obviously, in UFC 196, and he'll be wanting to expose Conor McGregor's deficiency, and his cardiovascular endurance is also another question mark. He spent $300,000 on his training camp, Conor McGregor did, and he was still tiring in the later rounds. But of course, he was fighting a bigger man in Nate Diaz, and there's some lenience with that because just in general science, modern science, or any science in fact, the bigger guy will most likely have the advantage over the smaller guy, particularly in a fight. And Nate Diaz, Conor McGregor's been saying that Nate Diaz went into that fight 20 pounds over, the 170-pound limit when he actually fought. Of course, he made the weight. Nate Diaz did at 170.5. But so I don't think that's quite accurate. But basically, there was a weight difference, and Conor McGregor still beat him. At the time, I thought Nate Diaz could have won it. Just basically, his rounds at the end were more, I feel, dominant than Conor McGregor's was. But it was a close fight nonetheless, and you wouldn't say Conor McGregor was not a deserving winner, because he was. But unfortunately, I can't say he's a deserving candidate for the 155-pound title. It's just plain wrong, and it does an injustice on the Ultimate Fighting Championship that Conor McGregor is allowed to fight Eddie Alvarez. It's a business play. It's the first New York card, yes, but it's putting the 145-pound belt in limbo and also the 155-pound belt in limbo. Khabib deserves the title shot, and he's not getting it. And you just have to wonder, when is the UFC going to say no to Conor McGregor? They've said no to him at UFC 200, where he didn't fulfill his media obligations, but at the moment they seem to be falling down to his demands. And if he loses, there's going to be a lot of backlash, and if he wins, there's still going to be a lot of backlash, because if he doesn't defend the featherweight belt, what's he going to do? There's a lot of speculation, and I think valid speculation, that he may face Floyd Mayweather in a boxing match, which would generate millions for Mayweather Promotions, the UFC, because it would probably be a joint venture, because Conor McGregor is under contract with the UFC, and it would generate a lot of interest. And why would you fight in the featherweight division against a dangerous fighter like Jose Aldo, when you can, quote unquote, dance around the ring and make 100 million against Floyd Mayweather, or close to? So everything's becoming a business play now, and that's a good thing, because the fans get to see the most exciting fights. But Conor McGregor is really making a detriment to the sport, and that is that the UFC is becoming more a business than it is a competition.